I'm going to be talking about interviewing. I had a workshop I did for a conference back in 2020. So I got to talk about interviewing, talk to some students. It was all virtual, it's all recorded, but it's still relevant information. So I want to make sure you have that information. Have the chapters there so you can skip through what you need, whether it's just the intro, some parts while you're doing the interview, you talk about the STAR method, some good questions to ask, some follow up for after the interview. Just stick with it. Let me know what your thoughts are. And if you have any questions, I can do some more videos. Definitely going to want to stick around to the closing portion of the interview that I talk about. I have something that is not something that everyone does. It'll definitely make you stand out in your next interview. I've done it several times. Every time I've done it, interviewers have had a surprise look on their face. And I've got offers every single time. I haven't always taken the offers, but I've gotten the offers. So I think if you can do this right, it'll definitely set you apart. Before I get into the video, remind you to like and subscribe to this channel. Putting more stuff up here with career stuff, business stuff, and all the stuff from my podcast as well. People sharing their journeys. You can learn from them as far as what to do, even what not to do. But you can find me on socials, Instagram or Twitter. I am IncrediPaul, or on LinkedIn, search for IncrediPaul. Constantly putting out different things every day. I have clips from the podcast, links, so many different things. Trying to add value as much as I can. I'm really focused on helping people in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But a lot of the stuff I share can be used in a variety of different ways. But without further ado, let's watch the video, and I hope you get something out of it.
Definitely the traditional way we see it is that employer is evaluating the candidate. Are you the right fit for the job? Can you do the job? What do you bring to the table? Kind of what you guys mentioned. At the same time, you guys as the candidate, you're evaluating the employer. Is this the culture that I want to be a part of? Do their everything that they stand for, do I align with that? And do I feel a rapport with the person I'm interviewing with as well, whether it's the hiring manager, people you'll be working with in the future. So both are important, and I really think the second one helps, at least for me, has helped change my mindset on interviewing because it can get stressful to interview. You don't know them. It's a whole new experience, and you feel like they're evaluating you the whole time. But at the same time, you're evaluating them, and I think that helps put you at ease a little bit more. So talk a little bit about the interview procedure. I'll talk about some stuff to do before, during, and after the interview. But some key parts of the interview are definitely questions on your skills and experience. Usually you start off talking about, give you a brief interview or introduction about yourself. Usually there's going to be behavior-based questions. Sometimes there's technical questions. I'll focus more on behavioral-based questions for this session. I also want to have questions for the interviewer as well, as like I said, they're evaluating you, but you're also evaluating them if it's a good fit on both sides. Overall, the key for this is you want to present yourself as a top candidate. The interview is really a way to distinguish yourself from everyone else because you have the resume that gets your foot in the door in front of people, but then the interview is a chance to say, yes, these are the stuff that's on my resume, but this is how I set apart. This is how all the stuff I'm going to add to your organization. So some key things for successful preparation is before the interview. So number one thing I think is to know yourself. So this is more so on the soft skills side of things, is just to do some introspection because we all have different qualities and things that set us apart from everyone else. And this is a good opportunity to talk to friends or family that know you because a lot of times people on the outside looking in can see some things about you that maybe you didn't notice that you're really good at this. So this is about knowing yourself. Other thing is to research the employer, and I'll talk a little about that in the next slide. But practice is key. So whether it's coming to sessions like this to learn about what an interview entails, going to mock interviews, anything like that, practice, practice, practice for sure. So when you're doing your research, there's a few different ways you can do it. If you're just doing a Google search or you're going on different profiles or on LinkedIn, or I think the best way to do it is if you know someone within that company itself, maybe informational interviews. So I've seen some statistics, a lot of job placements are through referrals. So people who are at the company are referring people that they know. So as much as possible, if you can get connected with people either through sessions like this, if any of you guys are interested in the pet food or nesting arena or nesting in general, definitely reach out to me. But anytime you see people that are in a field that you're interested in, it's really good to connect with them, even if they're not necessarily someone I'll be interviewing in. They know the ins and outs of the company, and they know if the culture is a good fit or not. So I think that third one is really key. So like I talked about practice. So as far as preparing yourself for the interview, as you prepare, that helps you get over your anxiety. And I think I saw some questions about that before the session as we were talking about how to get ready for the interview. Practice is key. Like I can't say that enough as far as, and we'll have a chance to practice as well with you guys on the call. We'll partner up. We'll get to that towards the end of it to practice some of the stuff we're seeing here. And then different interviewing workshops, or if you have a career center as well, there's a lot of different information out there about there's certain, where it's a different industry, or just learning about the interview process as well. There's a lot of people who've done it before you, and they can share a lot of valuable advice. So we're arriving on time, especially right now in the virtual sense of things. You probably want to turn off your phone, because the last thing you want to do is have the vibrations or something if it's on the table. And same thing in person. In person, you could it just be in your pocket, so it's not as much of a distraction. The other part, as far as the handshake, like I said, that's in person. I don't know the next time I'm actually going to have to give a handshake, or if I'm going to forget how to do it. But try and smile as much as possible. So it shows that you're happy to be there. And when you smile, I know the studies have shown that when you smile, it automatically starts to make your mood a little bit better as well. And then the resume stuff, that's more in person, but if it's virtual, you don't have to worry about that. So the STAR method is really the method you want to use to answer behavioral-based questions. So if you guys haven't heard of that, coming up slides, I'll kind of talk about what behavioral-based questions are. But they're kind of tell me about a time. They want to show how you behave in certain situations. So use the STAR method to make sure you're talking about everything and make sure it's an all-encompassing answer. So like I showed up there, the situation, what was the context, what was happening, what was the job, what was the experience that you had, the task. It's more specific to you, because there might be a group project, but the task is, what were you doing in that group project? Or what were you supposed to do in that group project? And the actions is, what actually did you do? What did you complete? What got done? And I think the hardest part from my experience is the R, results and resolution. Because a lot of times it was like, oh, situation was I had this group project for my chem lab. The task was I had to study how oxidation affected different things. Action was I compiled an experiment, blah, 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 did all this stuff. But then the results are like, I did the experiment and then we were done. You want to make sure that you're talking through what were the results for the experiment. Did the experiment go well? Did it not go well? What are things that you learned from that experiment that you need to do in the future going forward? So I think the R part is the hardest part, because it really wraps everything together. And that's a lot of times in the R, because sometimes when you have behavioral-based questions, you have some that are more on a negative side. Maybe you're dealing with difficult people or talking about your weaknesses. That is where your chance to say, yes, this happened, but this is what I'm going to do going forward. So that's a chance to flip it around and show how things are better going forward. And I think that's the key thing. That we all go through struggles. No one goes through life smooth sailing all the way through. And if you have, I want to meet you, because I want to be more like you if you've gone through life not having any issues at all. But it's really key to show what are you learning, how are you developing. So as you're answering the question, make sure you're speaking slowly and clearly. And this just comes with practice. You don't want to talk too fast so that they understand what you're saying. And then listen carefully to what the interviewer's questions are. A lot of times what I've seen with those behavioral-based questions, and the next slide has some examples of it, is that some can be multiple parts. Maybe they have 2 or 3 questions wrapped in one. And don't be afraid to stop and ask them to read it again, Because most of the time when they're asking those questions, they're reading it as something in front of them. And then be honest. Like I said, everyone makes mistakes. So it's just be honest about the mistakes and just talk about what you're going to do going forward. That's really the key thing when it comes to those questions. They want someone that's continuously developing and improving themselves. So as we close the interview, some key things to keep in mind. So this is more geared towards industry, but I think a lot of it can be geared towards, like, if you're in academia, uh, may or may not gear towards academia. I mean, either someone can tell me if this relates or not. But key things, definitely want to ask questions. One thing I've done is definitely want to summarize your interest in the job. And I've seen this work pretty well for me in the past, as far as you have the elevator speech at the beginning, do a summary at the end as far as how the interview went, because they're going to talk to you about their experience, whether it's in grad school or in a particular industry, how long they've been there, what they've experienced, and even as you ask some questions. So if you ask your question about overcoming adversity or dealing with difficult people, towards the end of your summary, you can reiterate that. As I said earlier, I had some experience with this. I'm confident I can do this. Honestly, the interview is your chance to brag about yourself. There definitely is a balance. You don't want to come off as overly bragging, but in my personal experience, it's pretty hard to do. But it's a balance. But and the last thing, I definitely want to thank your interviewers. So I want to share some good questions to ask. This is more geared toward industry, but I think a couple of these you can ask for any interview, really. Definitely want to ask, why do you like working for the company? And then feel free, if you guys want to take a picture of this for future for questions you want to ask. And then, is there a new position, or how does this opening come about? I like to ask this question because depending on the job, some jobs are more stressful than others. So you need to understand, if it's a new position, then they can't tell you much about this. But if it's a position that maybe they have to keep rehiring every 6 to 7 months, then going in, it's a high stress job and you're just more mentally prepared for it. They're not going to come right out and tell you that this job is really stressful. Most of the time they won't tell you that. They put it in a really nice way. But from asking the questions, you can tell, like, is this something that I could see myself doing? Other thing, what does a typical first day or week look like, as far as is there any onboarding involved or any training I'm doing that first week? That kind of goes along with the 15 on there as well, if there's training or onboarding. And I always ask, what are the next steps in the interview process? When can I expect to hear back? A lot of times, like, we're anxiously waiting to when are we going to hear back? But I think if you can ask, when am I supposed to hear back? Whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, usually 1 or 2 weeks is what I've usually seen. Then after that time, feel free to send me an email and say, like, hey, I had this interview. I'm just following up because I was told I would get back to you in 1 or 2 weeks. Like, the whole thing for this whole process of interviews is to remember that they're people just like us. So yes, they're trying to hire you as a for the job or position, whatever it is. But it is possible that maybe they forgot, or maybe something got stuck in their inbox, or whatever it is. Like, we're people, things happen. So when you get that deadline, that you can reach back out, and then that's gives you more peace of mind. And my favorite question to ask is, what has made past people successful in this position? So what kind of qualities, what have people done? And sometimes it might tell you what people have done that has not made them successful as well. And then with you thank them there. I also want to send a thank you note same day if possible. Right now everything's virtual, so you could hit send literally right after the interview. I would say probably wait 1 or 2 hours afterwards. The reason I would say, from my experience, you want to send a thank you note pretty quick is that a lot of times, especially if you're interviewing with multiple people, they're gonna go talk to the recruiter. They're all gonna get together and share their experiences. So if you could send that thank you note before that happens, maybe it's later that day they're meeting or the next day, that's another way that you're showing and putting yourself right in the forefront of their mind because you don't know how many people they're interviewing with, especially virtually now. There's no way you can know how many people they're possibly interviewing with. And then on the other side, like I said, they're evaluating you, but you're also evaluating them. So this is your chance based on how the interview went. Is this a job that I actually want to do? Is this something that I'm actually interested in? And then the other thing about potential salary negotiations. So I know Brian Thomas actually talking about this. He has a session right now talking about salary negotiation. That's a whole other topic. But that's what you want to prepare for that going forward. And another thing, never accept the first offer, even if it's something that you want. At least sleep on it for a day, and then you can accept it the next day. But you also always want to sleep on it at the very minimum, and then counter offer over the email as much as possible. That kind of takes the emotion out of it because when you're dealing with money, even if you work up the courage to say I'm going to ask for this much more, when it comes to the time you're going to say it, you might kind of chicken out and say, oh, maybe I don't actually need that. But it's not how much you need, it's how much you're worth, and there's a difference. So a couple interview mistakes as we wrap things up. On the next slide, we'll talk about having you guys pair up and do the elevator speech as well as one of the interview questions. I want you guys to ask each other just in pairs. So interview mistakes, poor handshake. Probably not going to have to worry about this for a while, but make sure you have a good solid handshake. As much as possible, answer the questions directly. There's a tendency as things happen, you can get nervous, start to talk really fast, but and this just comes with practice. Make sure you're really thinking about what the question is and giving the answers following that situation, task, action, and results. You don't want to ask about benefits, vacation time, or salary in the initial interview. Usually you don't want to bring it up in an interview at all unless they bring it up, and then you can be prepared about what you want. But best practice, don't bring it up unless they bring it up. And then the filler words, don't have to worry too much about that. That's just when you get nervous, you start and a lot. That just comes with practice. And as much as possible, to try and maintain eye contact.
Thanks for watching this video. I hope the information I shared was helpful. If there's anything you're looking to get from me, just reach out. Love to help out however I can, whether it's just through the videos or personal coaching or even through different trainings I offer as well. Thank you for joining me on this journey on the IncrediPaul YouTube channel or wherever you're listening to this. And let's just keep it going. I really appreciate you.